Welcome to the Health Marketing Collective, where strong leadership meets marketing excellence. I'm your host, Sara Payne, and I'm bringing you fascinating conversations with some of the industry's top marketing minds. Today, we're discussing how to build a strategic marketing organization from the ground up. This topic is so rich that we're making it a two-part series. In part one, we'll explore what it means to be a truly strategic marketing function and the telltale signs that might indicate your team is operating reactively rather than strategically. In our next episode, part two, we'll shift our focus to solutions, where to start, key steps to take, and how to build a marketing organization that drives real impact and growth. Joining me today is someone who's an expert at building and leading strategic marketing organizations, Yvonne Leonard. With a track record of driving digital transformation, leading product launches, and building thought leadership programs, she's known for creating high-performing teams that balance continuous improvement, collaboration, and fun. She's also a longtime client and friend of mine, so I'm thrilled to have her on the show. Welcome, Yvonne.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. We've got a lot to cover, so let's dive right in. And let's start off with this concept of a strategic marketing function. I don't like to throw phrases around without first creating a common definition and understanding of what we're talking about. So for you, Yvonne, how do you define a truly strategic marketing organization?
So a strategic marketing organization needs to actually impact the business and has to help drive business objectives within the organization. So they're not sprinkles. Marketing doesn't do pretty things. Marketing does strategic things and actually can help a company really drive the bottom line and really add to some of that predictability that all companies are looking for, right? Predictability in your growth so that you can continue to grow. And really smart marketing organizations can do that.
Love that. Love that definition. And can you elaborate on that a little bit more and talk about the kind of impact that a strategic marketing function can have on the broader organization? And as part of that, if you could address what difference it would make for sales or product development.
Okay, great question. So from the standpoint of marketing really being strategic, we really should be able to ultimately help with numbers, help you drive your business. So we should be able to help you say, with this many impressions, we get this many clicks, that many clicks leads to this many leads convert into sales. And you really should be able to almost reverse that math to say, if we have to grow X percent next year, it's going to take this much in terms of to get that many clicks, it takes this many impressions, and it costs us this much to get that many impressions. And so that ultimately should be what you can reverse engineer if your job of your marketing team, the primary focus really is kind of that building awareness and lead generation and really trying to drive that into the funnel. In the healthcare industry, marketing can have different roles. Sometimes it's a sales support role more than actually a marketing role. Sometimes it's more product management. I think the other thing that a really strong marketing team understands is, right, to get those clicks, you need to understand how to engage with customers. If you're developing a product, you need to understand how you are going to engage with customers, what customers are looking for from you. And so you can add really beneficial insights into that product roadmap and really drive product development and hopefully avoid some missteps by really understanding that audience. So I think marketing is twofold, right? It's equal part output, but it's that input. And I think the input is what's really often a challenge in some organizations to really focus on what does the customer need? And that is something that marketing really should be kind of the true north, right? Really the guidepost, the true north for this is what a customer is looking for.
Out of curiosity, Yvonne, how many times have you done this within your career to build a strategic marketing function from the ground up? It's more than once, right?
Yes, I've done it approximately 3 times, and it depends on the organization. I mean, we can count higher. I've been around the block a few times, but different organizations have looked for or asked for different things. So sometimes it's a ground up, sometimes it's been more of a re-engineering
Sure.
or a refocusing. So, but I've always been able to kind of re-engineer, refocus, and then grow that team in the way that the organization needs marketing to actually perform, even if they didn't know it needed to perform that way when I
Mm.
walked in the door. So, yeah.
Yeah, actually, that was I was going to ask about that. In most cases, did you know you were signing up for this? I mean, now you're kind of known for this, right? Like you're specifically now hired for this. But were there any situations maybe earlier on in your career where you didn't know the function didn't exist and you were going there or that you were going to have to build it when you showed up?
I think I've always had an inkling that I would have to build it. And I think that comes from early in my career, actually being in advertising agencies and working with clients. I
Mm.
think that broad perspective and understanding the unique challenges that different customers and clients had, you start to see some patterns form. And no marketing organization is perfect, right? We're living, breathing organizations, so there's always room for improvement. But I think the DNA tends to be relatively similar, and the problems tend to be relatively similar. And so when you start uncovering, you usually see some of those problems pop up right away, and then you know you're going to be addressing it. And the problems that pop up tend to be fundamental. They tend to be bedrock problems. And you really have to kind of get back in and make some significant adjustments. Maybe not always in the way an organization thinks you would have to make adjustments. Sometimes I think they think, this team isn't working. We need an overhaul of the team, and it may not be a team problem. It may be a process problem, or it may
Mm.
be a lack of clarity of roles and responsibilities kind of a problem. And so I think you start seeing the DNA and you start understanding that that's the genetic problem with this organization or this marketing team. And then you go after it to fix it.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of the patterns and the symptoms that you've seen. What are some of those biggest red flags or indicators that a strategic marketing function doesn't exist? You started to get into some of that there, but if you could dive a little bit deeper, that would be great.
Yeah, so I see one thing that I like to call the bright, shiny object group, right? So when people or teams are focused on what's cool, what is this bright, shiny object? And it's very much talking about cool tactics. That is typically a red flag for a problem. And that problem tends to either be a lack of process or potentially a lack of understanding. So that's one of the things I see. Another common problem when you walk into a marketing organization is a team that it tells you basically our hair is on fire every day. Like
Mm.
we're constantly behind the eight ball. We can't catch up. We're all burning out. That also tends to be either potentially a process problem or a role clarity problem. And so a lot of things kind of lead back to those issues. And then sometimes it is a marketing titled role, and the role isn't really marketing. So you're hiring people with marketing background for a role, and the role is really 100% sales support sometimes, or very much administrative, or just logistics for trade shows, right? Make it pretty, and we want to go here. And so those kinds of things need to really be addressed higher up within the organization to kind of talk about what you're missing out on by keeping somebody in a box and trying to define that role so tightly, right? And I'm not saying that trade show support and sales support aren't important functions, but I
Right.
think you have to think about what kind of resources you have and what are the best ways to deploy those resources within an organization to help the organization actually meet their goals. And so to me, it's really making sure that you understand all of that together, because sometimes I think stuff is siloed in discussions and thought, and everybody is well intentioned. But I think sometimes organizations are really missing out by narrowly defining what marketing can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And this, let's be clear, this isn't like startup organizations that only have this problem, right? People might stereotypically think that, but this can be found in organizations of all sizes, right?
That's correct. From startups to multinational companies, these problems exist across the board. And again, I think it's important for people to realize that there are some genetic indications of what these challenges are. And most companies are not alone, and most companies have bits and pieces of these things.
Sure.
Some companies are more resourced, and marketing is marketing, and then there's marketing communications as a separate role, and then meetings, events, and trade shows and those kinds of things as another role, and how they interact sometimes also affects kind of where the challenges are within how we take a look at making things better.
Can you speak to the lack of clarity around marketing's role within the organization and how that then impacts the team's effectiveness?
The challenge with one of the things I love to do actually when I walk into an organization is to ask people, how do you define marketing? And
Yes.
very frequently, I get as many different answers as the people that I talk to. Sometimes there's some common denominators, but that tends to be an indicator that maybe we need to understand kind of what marketing's role is in the organization. But if you're in an organization where sales leadership thinks one thing and your senior leadership thinks another thing and your product team thinks another thing, it's very easy for a marketer to try to please a lot of different people who have very different desires for what that marketing output is. And so by really kind of pulling back in and getting really clear about what things can be done, and what choices potentially an organization needs to make to actually execute at a higher and more valuable level to the organization. You kind of have to peel that onion back sometimes and start having those discussions. But I would say that's the challenge, right? You can't serve multiple masters. And depending on those dynamics within an organization, I mean, that's a very fast and easy way to burn people out.
Yeah, 100%. So in the early days of joining a new organization or restructuring a team, what are some of the key steps that you take, Yvonne, to understand all of these unique challenges that are at play?
There are a couple things I typically do. Again, first is to ask people what the role of marketing is, and that to me is an easy one, and it gives you a lot of insight. And then if you talk to the marketing team, right, ask them about what their greatest achievements have been,
Mm,
and where they feel frustrated. Talk to some of the other parts of the organization that marketing would partner with, and ask them the same kinds of things. Where do you think marketing needs to improve? Where do you think marketing does stuff well? And go in and really listen more than anything else, and understand that everybody is usually coming from a very good place, right? Everybody is well intended, and oftentimes, as we start peeling the onion again, it's a mix of different things. If marketers are talking to you about what their best accomplishment was, and there is no measurement and an
mm,
objective isn't discussed, you kind of are dealing with potentially bright, shiny objects. Are we focused on tactics? And I think that's a trap that a lot of marketers get stuck in, right? It's a little bit of fire, aim, shoot. Well,
yeah.
this is a cool thing, so how can we do this without really going back and, understanding you do certain things to accomplish certain objectives. And when you try to reach an objective with the wrong tool, it's not as effective as it could be. So to me, looking at our marketers talking about measurement, right? Objectives of what they're trying to do and measurement. Is the organization frustrated with bright, shiny objects? That they want more bright, shiny objects? If you're not getting measurable objectives that an organization wants the marketing team to do, and it's more conjecture, right? Then you know that we have to have these discussions about making clear goals for the marketing organization, and how do we start doing that. So those are some of the things. Process is another thing, right? There's a lot of scope creep that can happen.
Yeah.
How many people are in the decision making mix, right? Again, if you're dealing with multiple decision makers and all of them kind of define what marketing's role is differently, obviously somebody's hair is going to be on fire, because you're constantly going to be disappointing somebody every time you turn around. So, that makes it really hard. So those are some of the things, but really a lot of question asking and a lot of listening and just observing, right? I think those are some very easy kind of first steps, because if you're taking notes and you're really listening, and you have 27 pages of notes and there's zero commonality across the board other than they like bright shiny object tactics, and nobody really is clear on what marketing's role is here, and there's no measurement, you have some places that you can make some improvements that really should impact the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. Listening, asking questions and taking that time to listen is so incredibly important, and an important diagnostic, if you will, of the current realities of the organization. And you're hitting on so many, I think, common frustrations, common pain points that different marketing leaders, marketing organizations will face at any point in time within the organization, having to answer to multiple different people without a clear decision-making tree or line of approvals, and therefore, having to run and please all these different people. I mean, a lot of these things that you're talking about, we see so commonly inside of different marketing teams, again, of organizations of various different sizes. I'm curious, Yvonne, what type of time frame you like to give yourself, early on in a new company, new environment, to do this listening and observing, asking questions process, because there is also the pressure, right, to produce a plan and to, show the organization what this new leadership is going to do. So can you talk a little bit about, generally speaking, what time frame you're doing this early work in?
It has to be done typically relatively quickly. Like you said, there is pressure to show that you have improvement. But when you start uncovering things like, do all of you realize that there is no common understanding what marketing's role is? I think you can sometimes start pitching some of the problems that are very solvable, but start talking about the findings that you have. And so start talking about those, listen really well for the first month, and then start diagnosing what you have, and be real clear with your leadership team. Here's what I'm seeing, but I also think it's really important to talk to the marketing team as well and just show them, like, here are some of the things that I'm noticing. Again, it's an organizational challenge. This is not on anybody individually.
Yeah.
You need to, these are things that I, think we could improve upon and could make everybody's lives better. And so, I would say, diagnose in 30, have kind of a game plan, or at least have those discussions moving up the chain to say, these are things that we need to address. And then that plan for addressing and executing needs to kind of happen all in the first 90 days. But you don't have to, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but you don't have to fix everything day one, right?
Yes.
But what we need to do is we need to figure out where we can fix things, and, prioritize what's broken, and then fix according to what's fixable, and where can we make an impact, and where can we gain a little bit of momentum to make everybody feel like they're doing a better job. Because if you're dealing with an organization potentially that says, we don't think our marketing team is performing. I mean, I was in an organization that actually said that to me. We don't think our marketing team performs very well. And we're bringing you in here to kind of challenge the status quo. And a lot of it was process issues, right? So it might not be the marketer. And I think it's very unfair to necessarily look at culpable individuals as the immediate fix. Now, you may have a bad, I'm not saying that, like, sometimes there are cancerous individuals within an organization that are just bad news for how things are going to go.
Sure.
But typically, I think even if people are slightly defensive, right, they're worried about their job and everything else, one of the things that we have to learn as leaders is nobody's going to do their best work if they're afraid, right?
Yes.
It is paramount. So you need to make sure that you are empathetic and listening. And then if there are issues that you need to do in terms of performance with individuals, those things can be addressed, but you can't come in, with a big stick and start saying, things are going to have to change around here, and, be too bold and too scary. And because you'll lose people, or people will clam up and you won't get anywhere. And I think that's something I've learned along my career. I think I was a little bit more gung-ho, we're going to fix this tomorrow. And that doesn't work. You may get change, but what you may lose is really good team members. Certainly, because you're trying to prove to your leadership that you can make an impact so fast, but you have to work at the speed of an organization. And I think a lot of it is really great discussion with your leadership team, making sure they understand what you're trying to accomplish, and making sure that is very open and honest and candid. Because I think you have to, if you have process issues and clarity of roles and responsibilities, you can't really judge a human being doing a job when those things are lacking in an organization. And even though your HR job description says this is the role, in practicality, if that is not the role and that is not the expectation, that has to get fixed before, and you have to give people a chance with more clarity to do the job that you ask them to do.
Yeah, I love so much of what you just said there. This coming in, and yes, we have to show some progress and a plan quickly, but in those early days, showing some of what you're hearing, and being able to describe some of those early problems, because that's going to build a lot of sort of trust with you as a leader that you are doing the work. Even if you need more time to finish out those listening sessions. And then the other part of that key point that you made there was this is not throwing the marketing. This is not about throwing the existing marketing team under the bus, right? This is not that, because you do need some continuity. You are going to want to retain some of that legacy knowledge and important legacy knowledge. And you may actually have some high performers there that have just gotten caught in, a trap of not having clarity in the role, or a strategic leader in there to say these are the priorities and to help manage the expectations across the organization. So I love all of that. What advice would you give for someone entering into a similar role like this, who may feel that immediate pressure to make changes? Any other advice that you would give them?
Personally, I think the hardest thing sometimes is to go in completely blank slate, right? You may have interviewed with certain people who may have swayed you one way or swayed you another way, or who you're going to report to may see something one way. You need to keep yourself open to, I have to make this decision for myself and I can't be swayed by other people. Because if you're getting hired to be that person walking in and helping to diagnose and then help rebuild and refocus a marketing organization, you're hired as the expert. So you can't allow people who are not marketing experts to sway you. And so that would be, for me, the most important. Open mind, open heart, Really listen. Do not ask leading questions. Leading questions are super easy to get stuck in a trap doing. Don't ask leading questions. You actually have to kind of put on your therapist hat and listen to people and see what you can deduce from that and ask good follow-up questions. But I think not making any decisions until you feel like you have covered your bases before you make, an analysis is important.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we wrap this part one of this episode, I did want to ask if you've ever turned down a role where a strategic marketing function needed to be built, wasn't there. And let's take comp off the table, right? Like beyond comp, let's assume the organization's going to pay you what you're worth to do the job at hand. But are there any other reasons why you would turn down a role like this to build this strategic marketing function?
A couple of things. Number one, if I think that the leadership's expectations are unrealistic, and
yes,
I explain, this is going to be a process, da 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 da, and it's a yeah, but. I always feel confident. We can get stuff changed, and we can start making things better, and things better meaning for the marketing team as well as for the organization, right?
Yes.
That we can do that relatively quickly. But, how much are you willing to resource for this? Like if you're an organization who's not happy with your marketing, but your marketing is extremely underfunded and you have no desire to fund that any further, there's only so much that can be done in a certain period of time. Like, okay, if you're going to wait, you can wait for only organic, marketing to happen and fine. But like, if they're not going to wait for things like that, that's a problem. So I typically look at, does the leadership team actually want marketing to play a more strategic role in the organization? Do I believe it when they say that? And then also take a look at funding and where are you funded? Does that feel right? And then what kind of funding would be available? And again, I'm not asking for landslides of, buckets of cash, even though I think every marketing person would love buckets of cash.
Yeah, absolutely.
That, right. But how do you, how funded is it? And are they willing to do that? Because you can only do so much, right?
Yeah.
If the organization is not going to fund that role or that team enough to make change. Because sometimes if it's a process, it may be an infrastructure change that's needed. There could be things that the organization is lacking fundamentally to get them to the next level. And if they're not going to, invest in that kind of a situation, that typically is a no-go for me.
Yeah, that's well said. Well, we've covered the signs and symptoms that indicate a marketing organization might be operating without a strategic foundation. And I hope this resonates with anyone who's experienced the shiny object syndrome or the constant fire drills. We've all been there. You all are going to get more of Yvonne's insights in our part 2 episode, where we'll dig into how part of this discussion, the tangible steps to transition a marketing team from being reactive to strategic, where each move is data-driven, scalable, and impactful. Be sure to tune in 2 weeks. Yvonne, if folks want to reach out and get in touch with you, how can they connect with you?
The best would be just reach out through LinkedIn, Yvonne KF Leonard.
Excellent. That's it for today's episode of the Health Marketing Collective, where strong leadership meets marketing excellence, because the future of healthcare depends on it. We'll see you next time.